the series of short videos on systems assurance, and this is episode 3. My name is Jahangir Sheikh. In this episode, let's look at the extremely important requirements management process. As we already got the signed contract documents with us now, the next step is to elicit requirements from the contract document for the design process. So firstly, let's define the requirement. A requirement is number 1, a condition or capability required by the user to achieve an objective. Number 2, a condition or capability that must be met or possessed by the system or system component to satisfy A, the contract, B, the standard, C, a specification, or D, other formally imposed documents. And number 3, a documented representation of a condition or capability. For large projects, we definitely need a requirements management tool, as we have to manage thousands of requirements and multidisciplinary teams work on the requirements, and probably multiple different organizations work together to realize the requirements. Each and every requirement need to be progressively verified and validated to measure the progress of the project. Another important concept to remember while eliciting requirement is SMART concept. So what is SMART? SMART stands for S for specific, M for measurable, A for appropriate or achievable, R for realistic, and T for traceable and time bound. So let's look at this sample passage from the contract document, and let's try to elicit requirements from this passage. The passage goes: a railway integration and system contractor shall develop a labeling system and shall be in accordance with the Paradise Rail Asset Management Strategy. To ensure a holistic and universal asset labeling system is provided across all the contracts and stages of the works, and which can be extended to accommodate future extensions of the Paradise Rail network. The contractor shall develop and apply labeling throughout their works in accordance with the labeling system. So based on this passage, let's try to elicit requirements and progress further.
Okay, so let's try to elicit requirements from the passage which we just picked up. Specification ID, this is a unique number provided to every single requirement, which is identified by this particular number, and every project will have a specific protocol to be followed. So in this sample I am using C0786 as the project number, and Paradise and 007 as the first requirement, and the next requirement is 008, and this would continue this way. And clause number in the contract is 7.8.6, because this passage we picked up from this particular clause 7.8.6, and we created 2 requirements from this, and I will explain as we progress further the reason why we have 2 requirements. And the first requirement is the railway integration and system contractor shall develop a labeling system, and it shall be in accordance with the Paradise Rail Asset Management Strategy to ensure a holistic and universal asset labeling system is provided across all the contracts and stages of the works, and which can be extended to accommodate future extensions of the Paradise Rail network. And the second requirement is the contractor shall develop and apply labeling throughout their works in accordance with the labeling system. So the reason why we divided it into 2 requirements is, first of all, the first part of this passage is we need to create a labeling system that can be used for the complete project as such, and the second part of the requirement is the labeling system which we have developed have to be used on the project, on the complete project. So as we scroll to the right, please pay attention to the titles. So we are mentioning that it is the statement type is it a technical requirement or a non-technical requirement. So basically we'll have functional requirement, technical requirement, non-technical requirement. This definitely is a technical requirement, and this is a tracked requirement, and we need to definitely track this requirement. And requirement identification status, because when we put together a requirement, it will be reviewed by a DVE or PMC. So DVE is design verification engineer and PMC is project management consultant. Actually we call PMC as engineer. And allocated discipline, because assets are there in every discipline, so we definitely want to allocate this requirement on all the disciplines, and specifically civil engineering including MEP. And to what locations this will be used? This will be used for all locations. And allocated design verification stage, so this will be verified during design stage 1, design stage 2, as well as the final design stage. And verification allocation status is reviewed by DVE and PMC, because whenever we allocate particular requirement to be verified at a stage, this will be reviewed and approved by the DVE as well as PMC. And the acceptance criteria, because we have to arrive at acceptance criteria before we create the evidences for a particular requirement. So the acceptance criteria goes like this: the railway integration and systems contractor shall develop a labeling system which will be considered as the asset labeling strategy adopted for Paradise Metro. So this will be the acceptance criteria, and all the evidences provided shall be in accordance with the accepted criteria. And this acceptance criteria has to be reviewed by the engineer, and once it has been reviewed by the engineer, we will tick in the box and say this is reviewed by the engineer. And specific reference within the evidence. So when we have the evidence, every evidence will have a specific identification number. This will be the identification number of the evidence. And revision 3, asset naming and labeling standard is the evidence, and within which section 5 paragraph 2 verifies this requirement. And further down, evidence review status, it is reviewed by the engineer, and every evidence when we allocate to a requirement, we will have a evidence ID and that particular evidence number as well. And what is the reference, what is the revision of the number of the evidence. And verification evidence title is the title of the evidence. Whether it is approved or not, it is approved. And what is the stage? Stage, handover stage. We'll have to check whether evidence has any errors or not. So the evidence has no errors, so there's no problem. And verification stage at D1, DS1, DS2 and the design final. So DS1 will have to tick in the box, and because once we start progressively developing the evidences at design stage 1, and as we develop during the design stage 2 and at the final design stage, there shouldn't be any errors, as well as the requirement has to be verified. In case of any comments are there from engineer, we'll have responses. DVE comment will have responses and change history. Similarly, the second requirement is the contractor shall develop and apply labeling throughout their works in accordance with the labeling system. So this has to be validated once the project is complete and all the assets are installed, tested and commissioned. And once the commission is complete, then the validation has to complete. So for the validation, we'll have to have evidence for all the assets with the specific IDs attached, tagged to the particular assets. That's how we progress, and I just try to explain to this in a very quick manner, but in case of anybody has any questions, we can discuss them in the comment section.